What is going on, everybody? My name is Chimpact, and welcome to Week 5 Power Rankings. Let me know who you have in your top 10 of the Power Rankings. I'll start with mine. Number 10, I have Drew. Drew's season thus far has been pretty much a roller coaster. He's had some pretty good wins and some pretty tough losses. And this past week, it was an excellent showcase of how good his team is when he combines his threats with defensive pivots. He had a Specs Hondoom with Stunfisk and Buzzwole as his defensive switch-ins, and it was very, very good for him utilizing those defensive pivots. He got an early lead with Hondoom, getting a kill early on, and pretty much that early lead allowed him to win the game because he sacked the right Pokemon after he got that early lead, and he could have choked under the pressure and sacked the wrong Pokemon late in the game because there was a Scarf Nidoking. He knew it was Scarfed. He didn't know it was Scarfed, but it happened to be Scarfed, but he didn't know it was Scarfed, but he played around the fact that it could be Scarfed until it was actually confirmed that it was Scarfed. And Nidoking could have gotten a kill every time that it came in if it clicked the right move. However, Drew didn't really predict what move it would click. He played under the worst case scenario of even if he clicked the right move, he sacked the right Pokemon, which was necessary for him to win the game. So he never sacked the Hondoom because Hondoom was key to killing the rest of his team. And it was one of the only Pokemon where it resisted the fire move from Nidoking and the ice move. So he forced the Nidoking to go for an awkward Thunderbolt play to where the Gyarados would have died to it, but the Hondoom lived. So because he sacked the right Pokemon, he was able to win the game because the Nidoking was Scarf, so it had to lock itself into one move, and there was no one move that it could lock itself into because Drew played the end game so well and he sacked the right Pokemon. And that's the type of performance that I want to see from Drew. I'm pretty sure he won his first week pretty convincingly, and this is a 1-0. It's not really that convincing, but a win is a win. Differential to me doesn't really matter much, but obviously it helps when you're on the fringe of the playoffs, which Drew might be with a 3-2 record. He's barely over 500, so if he does get high differential wins, it's great for him. But a win's a win, like I said, and hopefully he continues doing this. And another unranked team that I had from last week is Duncan. Duncan this week showed how dominant his team is. Scarfrachi plus T-Tar paired very well together. Jirachi baits in Pokemon like Cobalion and T-Tar, or Cobalion and Blastoise, which T-Tar really wants weakened. After a couple Iron Heads, I'm pretty sure Cobalion goes down to, I don't think he even needs a couple Dragon Dances to knock it out with Low Kick, but in case it is like a Chople Berry, that would be very effective in knocking it out. And Blastoise, 2 or 3 Iron Heads, and then it'll die to Crunch and Sand. So, like, even if the T-Tar isn't capable of KOing the Blastoise with Crunch after a couple boosts, and it does happen to get burned, Jirachi did have Healing Wish, so he had contingency plans for if the T-Tar does go down, and that was excellent on his part. Like, Healing Wish Jirachi was a great bring on his part. And I just want to talk about the unlikely hero of the game, which was Lurantis. It put in the most work. When Duncan puts pressure on his opponents and he's not on the back foot, that's when he obviously excels. And last week he tried to use Trick Room and it was very awkward. He never really got anything out of it. Every turn that he tried to attack under Trick Room, he dealt no damage at all, or he did minimal damage. But this week he had a much more offensive team. He didn't try to use any defensive pivots, and that just goes to show you like what type of team that Duncan has and what type of playstyle that he really needs to bring to be able to win. Honestly, I don't think that Lurantis was going to be this good going into this week, I'm going to be honest, but it really put in the most work. And number 8, it's disappointing for me to see Wolf this low as well, but he is my number 8. He is 3-2 as well, and 2 losses this early in the season is not what I expected Wolf to do. He's back-to-back champion, NAIC champion, potential world champion again in 2019, And honestly, I'm gonna say that it was partially due to the fact of the trade that Joey and Gator did. Now, you could argue that Joey didn't bring Zera Aura, and it didn't really affect the outcome of the match, but the way that Wolf prepped made it very bad for him, because Zera Aura plus Breloom makes it awkward for Tornadus to be brought, because Tornadus checks Breloom, but it doesn't really deal well with Zera Aura. And had he had Volcarona, Tornadus would have been a lot better. And I just want to quickly say this. I don't understand the people that are saying this is cheating by Joey, because number one, he didn't bring Zera in this game anyway, and number two, they traded back. So because Wolf and Joey are on the same side of the bracket, if they do happen to play in the playoffs, he's gonna have the Volcarona anyway. So it's not like he's gonna trade and trade back and then trade back to get the Zera Aura again in the playoffs. So that's just a side note for you guys. But ultimately, I felt like Wolf could have played this game a lot better. He had the Worry Seed to tech for the Breloom. I don't know if he specifically brought the Worry Seed for the Breloom, but it was obviously very good tech for the Breloom, but he didn't really utilize it to its full potential. He should have just used it to kill the Breloom instead of doing a lot of damage to it. I know he knew that it wasn't going to kill the Breloom, because there was not enough turns that Breloom stayed in for Toxic to really rack up that much. He should have waited, maybe switched around a couple times to scout out Breloom's full moveset, and then brought back in the Virizion, because he did Toxic the Virizion as well. And he had the Duosion, and you're not going to Spore the Virizion. Joey didn't have Spore anyway, but he wasn't going to Spore Virizion if he had Spore anyway. Or it was unlikely, and he could have woken up later with Duosion anyway. So I felt like he should have just switched around a little bit, bait the Breloom to stay in a little bit longer, and then click Worry Seed. Even if he switches out when you click Worry Seed, the effect that you had with Worry Seed by clicking it as the Virizion died is essentially the same thing, because you're not going to, the Breloom isn't going to die from the damage that Worry Seed did because of the poison anyway, because of the sheer amount of recovery that it has with Lead Seed, Protect, and Drain Punch. So it wasn't, if it's at 1%, that's as good as 100% to me, because of how difficult it is to kill Breloom on Wolf's team. If it's at 0%, obviously that's huge. You get rid of Breloom, one of the biggest threats to your team, and you continue playing on with the game. So the Blastoise is another problem that I had for Wolf. I don't know. He said that he had Zen Headbutt earlier, and I felt like Zen Headbutt was much better than Liquidation, because what is Liquidation really doing for you that Aqua Jet also isn't doing? The Pokemon that get hit by Liquidation kind of also get hit by Aqua Jet, but because you're running Substitute as well, it really helps. It allows you to balance the damage output, I guess, because Zen Headbutt works really well against some of the slower Pokemon, like a slower Breloom or a Toxapex, that you could potentially flinch and maintain the Power Up Punch boost, because if the Toxapex doesn't haze, then that's very good for you, and you could potentially come out of it with the +1 boost, and you're behind a sub, so it could be very, very, very good for you. The only problem that I guess Wolf had maybe with Zen Headbutt was the accuracy, but that's something we all gotta deal with. So I don't know, it was a tough loss, but I expect Wolf to bounce back. He's still a top player in the league. That's 2 losses after a very strong start from Wolf, but we'll see how he bounces back from this. But you know who did bounce back really well? My number 7, Kelly, under the radar. But he got a lot of help from Kyle, because Kyle was not really paying attention. Maybe he didn't check the transactions. Maybe he didn't check team preview. He didn't see that Arbok on his team. He should have saw that Arbok on his team, because that Arbok went in. He set up Toxic. Kelly basically got like 4 free turns because he got up Toxic Spikes, and Arbok just came in, absorbed the Toxic Spikes, and started going ham. The Volcanic did get crit. Second time Volcanic got crit this season. Very unfortunate. That crit probably mattered. Actually, I mean, definitely mattered. Both times the Volcanic got crit mattered. But in the long run of the game, I don't think it really mattered that much. And the game is pretty straightforward, so I'm not really going to talk about it too much. However, the transactions that Kelly made are very, very important. And I might have him a little bit higher if his transactions go the way that I think they're going to go. Getting W's. So he got Sableye and Arbok. I don't know about Arbok. Arbok's a decent Pokemon. It's alright. But the Sableye is a huge pickup. Sableye deters opponents from setting up hazards versus it, which is already, very, very good in itself. But the other thing that Sableye does is that it chips away at your opponent's team and really hurts their defensive backbone because of Knockoff and Will-O-Wisp. So it's able to whittle down their team, and Superior and Zygarde really, really, really appreciate that. Superior and Zygarde can run niche sets to deal with defensive Pokemon, but if they don't have to do that, and you can utilize Sableye instead of that, that makes their job so much easier, like I said. In addition to that, Sableye is also win con when you can utilize Calm Mind and Recover and just set up and just kill Pokemon. And Sableye prevents your other Pokemon from getting status because they're going to be hesitant on using Will-O-Wisp on Zygarde and Toxic on Superior or Thunder Wave on Superior when you have a Sableye with Magic Guard in the back. So it eases prediction for you. Very good free agent pickup by under the radar. Very, very good. Number 6, Galactic Elliot. This was also a very straightforward game that I'm not going to talk about too much. Turn 1, very unfortunate crit on that Sacred had to see on the Aerodactyl. So don't know why Elliot stayed in turn 1 when he could have U-turned, but Aero was a huge threat to his team, and eliminating in turn 1 pretty much healed the game for him because the lack of threat that he had to deal with for the rest of the game was huge. Even if he got off the chip damage with Power Up and it didn't crit, it was going to be huge because just getting that damage meant that it would have been a lot easier to kill later on in the game. So outside of this game, I'll just talk about the transactions that Elliot made that I think were huge. So he got rid of his Mega Ampharos for Mega Garchomp. Very big addition. You get a lot stronger. I don't really like Mega Ampharos as a Pokemon in Draft League because it's so slow. It's got decent bulk, but it doesn't really utilize it that well. Its coverage is very poor. It's pretty much just Electric Dragon and then some niche moves that it can use like Power Gem. So I don't really like its coverage. Garchomp has great coverage, has access to a lot of moves. Speed tier is alright, but the main thing that I like about the Garchomp edition and the Gator edition is that they're sturdy rock resist. So he got rid of Sandslash to get Alolan Sandslash to pair up with his Alolan Ninetales to get the speed boost and everything. And his team is pretty rock weak with Scolipede, Alolan Ninetales, and him not having a lot of resist. Sandslash was pretty much the only resist before that. But by adding Garchomp and Gator, he gets 2 rock resist. Gets a fast Pokemon in Sandslash when you pair it up with Alolan Ninetales, and you do speed up your team overall because Gator has priority and Garchomp is faster than Mega Ampharos. So very, very good moves by Galactic Elliot to really strengthen his team. Gator is at number 5. He stayed the same. I know. He beat undefeated Envy. He's 4-1. But let me explain. Can you let me explain? So he brought a meme team this week, and he won. But sometimes you can be results oriented, but sometimes you can't. Let me tell you why. He nearly lost to Azumarill because he played the Celebi so recklessly. It was literally the only Pokemon that could take a hit from Azu one-on-one. But you could argue that he has Envy's number. He's played Envy before, and he's gotten the better of him multiple times. And so maybe this move was to get in Envy's head and make him second guess himself. It's like, am I making the right move here? Because Gator might be one step ahead of me. So maybe he went into the mind of Envy and made him rethink all of his plays. So maybe that was a calculated play of sacking Celebi essentially to really deal with Victini. Now, while I'm talking about the last turn of the game, it was a bit unfortunate, but Gator I mean, it's unfortunate for Envy, but like Gator, let's be real here. Gator brought a team of 5 banded Pokemon and 1 Z-move Pokemon, and he was paying half attention to the game. And you know what that shows you? Gator's a big talent. Now, obviously, he didn't really bring the most serious team because he expected Envy to make the playoffs, and if they do happen to meet in the playoffs, you don't want to bring the same team twice, and you don't really want to bring a team at all that's similar to the team that you want to use in the playoffs anyway. So, should they face in the finals or in the playoffs, they can't face in the finals. I'm gonna expect Gator to play a lot more discipline. Maybe you see a live comp and bring a more polished team than the one he brought. Gator's schedule so far has been insane. He's been facing undefeated teams left and right. Next week he has another one in Leo, so that's going to be a great game to watch. And speaking of Leo, he is a number 4 in my rankings. He kept his undefeated streak alive against Tup. He got pretty unlucky this game by missing a few Focus Blasts, and it really sucks that he has to bring Focus Blast. I'm going to defend bringing the Focus Blast over another move, obviously, because T-Tar is just so bulky and it does so much damage with Crunch that you really have to bring a move like Focus Blast that can easily miss, and it's very unfortunate, but you gotta do it. You gotta do what you gotta do. If you try to Toxic it with Acid Armor, that's not gonna work because T-Tar does way too much damage. If you switch out every time Renix comes in, T-Tar could have Pursuit. If you go for HP Ground, it doesn't do enough damage. If you go for HP Fighting, it doesn't do enough damage. If you go for Calm Mind, Acid Armor, Signal Beam, you get Crit number 1, Defense Drop number 2, Roar number 3. Like, there's just so many ways it can backfire. The coverage is pretty awful. There's so many ways it can backfire for you. So Focus Blast was absolutely necessary. But even though he did dodge a couple Focus Blasts, the T-Tar, the luck goes both ways. Because I think the roll on the Musharna mattered a little bit, because I'm pretty sure the first frustration that the Lopunny hit on the Musharna didn't do that much damage, but the second one I was like, okay, there's no way this is killing, and it killed. So I don't know, I felt like the second one was huge, and it was a crucial damage roll which enabled him to win the game. After that, after Musharna was gone, like, there was no way that Leo was not winning that game. The only thing is, I just want to know one thing: why was the Alolan Dugtrio slower than a Manaphy? Alolan Dugtrio has base 110 speed. 110. I don't know why it was slower than the Manaphy. That's all I want to know. Number 3. Was it... Actually, it might have mattered because I don't know if... Reuniclus might have gotten to it killed by Adamant Earthquake in the sand. With Sand Force or something. That might have been more. But just let me know if there was another reason. I really want to know. Envy is still number 3, despite the fact that he didn't play this game that optimally. But like I said earlier, it was a tough roll in the Azumarill to win the game. I really wish Envy live comped, because the reasoning behind why he switched from Azu to Sceptile, like, if he thought it was banded, then he was gonna lose the game because Poison Jab. If it was banded, it was gonna run poison coverage for the Azu Sceptile combo, so he was just gonna lose to Poison Jab or Gunk Shot. Gator probably ran Gunk Shot. Gator probably runs Gunk Shot because he's a savage. He's a savage. He wanted to lose. But like, if it was banded, like I said, then Poison Jab would have killed both of the Pokemon. So I really wish Envy live comp, but he doesn't. Now, there is something to be said about the way that Gator played this game and the way that Envy reacted to it. Like, he kept predicting him to switch out of his Celebi, and I really think that got into his head. And this has happened before between Gator and Envy, where both of them had to have made plays, and Gator usually comes on top out of these plays, comes out on top in some of these plays. For example, I remember the first time that they fought in the GBA, there was a Doublade versus an Alakazam. Gator had Shadow Sneak and Pursuit. I don't think he revealed Pursuit. I think he revealed the Shadow Sneak. Envy switched, and Gator went for Pursuit and got the kill on the Alakazam. And it's stuff like that, and the Victini versus the Celebi interaction, to where I really think Gator is in Envy's head, and it really knows like exactly what Envy is going to do. So the fact that he brought a meme team and beat Envy, I feel like that's really going to. We'll see how Envy reacts in the playoffs if they do face in the playoffs, because it's not guaranteed that they're going to face in the playoffs. They are 2 of the 4 best teams in the Shield. Are they in the Shield division? Shield division? I think the other side of the Sword division. So we'll see. But Envy is still number 3 because I feel like that role was way too important for me to not let him stay at number 3. Okay? Despite the meme team, despite everything. And at number 2, I have Dan. Dan once again shows why Gastronon is so important to his team. He's brought it every week so far, and it's such a huge part of his defensive backbone. This week, it really didn't do much, but you might think it didn't do much, but it did. It did a lot. So it forced Patters to go with an awkward Coco set with Nature's Madness. I don't think Patters knows that Coco gets U-turn, because he's brought Volt Switch twice so far in his past 2 games against defensive ground types that are likely going to switch in on Coco. Or I don't know, maybe he brought Volt Switch on purpose because he wants to get that electric train boost. I don't know why. I don't know why he didn't bring U-turn this week, but I feel like U-turn against bulky ground types, you have to do it. Like, you're forced to do it. So, I don't know. Ultimately, this game was tough because of the unfortunate sleep pattern misses. I feel like Patters has a chance to win this game if some of the sleep patterns do connect. But I think it's funny how like every single one of the abilities Venomoth had would have been great this week. Compound Eyes prevented Sleep Pattern from missing so often. Tinted Lens, which I think he had, allowed Bug Buzz to do massive damage to the Skarmory and some of his other Pokemon that resisted, and Wonder Skin would have allowed him to play a bit more recklessly with Quiver Dance and maybe even sub against some of his other Pokemon, so that if he does happen to roar with his Skarmory or Whirlwind, then there's only 50% chance of that happening. So he could have maybe even afforded to not go Sleep Powder, maybe go Hidden Power Fire or Hidden Power Electric on his Venomoth to deal with the Skarmory a little bit better. But outside of that, like, Dan played this game really well. He could have played a little bit slower, because had Patters realized that he had Venusaur and Skarmory to mainly deal with the Venomoth by roaring it away, then he could have sacked all of his other Pokemon and had Lastmon Venomoth to try to sweep his team. But A-Drive, I felt like A-Drive was playing that game pretty rightfully as well, because he, like, all the sleep pattern misses do get to you, and it gives you the full sense of security that you're in a huge lead. And he could have lost to maybe a Venomoth, but I still don't know, because the Venomoth would have been really weak into the spikes that A-Drive did set up. And I don't know how much it really mattered, but they would have probably been a little bit closer at least. Like, Venomoth maybe would have gotten another KO or 2 if it was the last Pokemon remaining. And at number 1 is Joey Pokeyame. So Wolf was 3-1 going into this week, and Joey was 4-0. So it was either Envy or Joey was going to stay undefeated, or they were going to have the same record. And when I was watching Joey's side of this battle, I thought that Wolf was not trying at all. I thought he was doing a Gator strat, where he brought a team that was a meme, and he wasn't taking it very seriously. I saw the Worry Seed on the Virizion. I saw the physical Blastoise. I thought, this is not a serious team. The Worry Seed was a nice tech, I do admit, but I felt like it was not played optimally. And Joey really prepped well for this game. He had Zera and Breloom, which forces Wolf to make awkward decisions with his Mandibuzz and Tornadus, because Zera obviously goes in against flying types, and flying types are the Pokemon that Breloom really struggles to deal with. And Joey used every resource to his advantage, especially the surprise factor. So he had his Breloom set, but he didn't reveal all of his moves, and there was a play or a turn where Breloom was in on Virizion, and Wolf has the Worry Seed on his Virizion, right? But he never switches to Duosion. I don't think he ever switched to Duosion on the Breloom. And Joey hid the last move for a lot of the game. And I don't think Wolf realized that even when Joey revealed all those moves, that it didn't have Spore. Because Spore is such a common move on Breloom, you just automatically think that every Breloom has Spore. So I think that Wolf subconsciously thought that Breloom had Spore, so he never went out to Duosion, which actually just walled the Breloom. The Breloom could not do anything to the Duosion. So it was actually, he could have saved himself a few Pokemon because he sacked the Virizion to Breloom, he sacked the Alolan Golem to the Breloom, and he could have sacked the Duosion to the Breloom by if it got spored, but Duosion is eventually going to wake up. It has very good bulk, so he would have obviously eventually woke up and had a good, decent check to Breloom. And I don't like the fact that Wolf went for Worry Seed on the Breloom. Like I said earlier, you either need to kill the Breloom or lose all your Pokemon. Because if you don't bring the Breloom down to 0, if it's at 1 or if it's at 100, it doesn't matter because of the sheer amount of recovery that it's going to do. Drain Punch, Lead Seed, Protect, Poison Heal. That's just way too much recovery, and it's going to heal up a lot if you do not kill it. It doesn't matter if it's at 1 HP. And once again, the Gothitelle is the MVP because Wolf ran a Shed Shell on his Mandibuzz this week to prevent it from being taken advantage of by the Gothitelle. And the fact that Joey didn't bring Gothitelle really shows how strong his team is. He didn't bring Zera either this week, or I mean he did bring it, but he didn't show it because his Breloom just went in. And it's stuff like that that really makes you. There's a lot of ways that makes you a good draft battler. There's other things that people aren't aware of, and it's using your Pokemon that you don't bring to force your opponent to do stuff. For example, if you have Ferrothorn and Gastrodon, your opponent's gonna run HP Fire, HP Ground, or HP Grass. They can't bring both. Joey has a Gothitelle. They have to run Shed Shell on some of their Pokemon, or else it's gonna get set up on. MV has a Ditto, so your opponents are less likely to set up. Those are very key components, very key Pokemon that you need to prep for, and Joey he used Gothitelle week 1, and that just, like I said in the Power Rankings for week 1, it set a precedent for the rest of the league that if you don't want to get taken advantage of by this Gothitelle, if you don't want to get revenge killed, if you don't want to get Trick Call Minded, you have to bring Shed Shell, or you will get revenge killed or set up on by this Gothitelle. And those are some very good Pokemon, very threatening Pokemon, and when you don't bring those Pokemon and you have other Pokemon that are threatening but less threatening than the Gothitelle, it just makes them that much more powerful. So that is it for my power rankings. Thank you guys for watching. Stay tuned for this week's match between It's Gator and Leo. Leo is undefeated. Gator has yet to play an opponent that has 1 loss. It's gonna be a great game. Alright, thank you for watching.